Welcome, brave fellow believers, to the Kingdom and Context podcast. This is called Kingdomcast. I appreciate you being here. And I'm Sean Griffin, the host. Tonight, we're going to be, as always, digging into some unique concepts that we can also show in Scripture. And this podcast is really dedicated to searching for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the Creator's Word and also of this world so that we can better relate His Word to this world. So I thank you for joining me, everybody. And if you haven't already, I just want to lovingly remind everyone to hit like, share, and subscribe to this video, as well as, if you would, go over to our new channel we've created for this podcast. It's called Kingdomcast, and it's on my channels list on my channel that you're watching right now. So you can probably even do it without leaving this broadcast. And you can subscribe to that channel, because I'm going to be in the future, once I reach 1,000 subscribers over there, I can start live streaming after I'm approved by YouTube to live stream this podcast directly on that channel. So help me get to 1,000 subscribers so that channel can just be dedicated to the podcast. And I appreciate everyone for going to do that. Also, check out our New Jerusalem Media channel that we have also. That's actually what we're starting to do, news stories from a biblical perspective, to try to get some unique reporting for stories that are usually either overlooked or just not covered from a believer's perspective. So go check out New Jerusalem Media as well, and I think you'll like it. But I want to say hello to everyone that's joined us in the chat already. You guys, looks like you've been here for a minute and already got some lively conversation going. Andy Pandy's back. Russell LaFleur's back. Yahweh King, Yusuf Enochian Bible, Jason RN. Hi, gentlemen. Welcome. All of you. Light of the Hill Ministries is here. Welcome. We see Callie J's back. Welcome. Noe Pereira. I think I said that right, man. I apologize if I got it wrong. Welcome. Good to see you. Shang Sun is here. Kingdom Truther. And let's see, there's Karen C., Chris Horsley, Steve Skomberg, Muskim Lavrov, David Shearer. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me. And I also want to just give a big shout out and thank you to all the admins that are here. You guys are awesome. Appreciate you guys showing up and keeping civility in the chat. And also, we just want to say a loving, big thank you to all of our supporters, as we do. We greatly appreciate the kind letters you send, the messages you send, and for the encouragement as well as the support. On the bottom here is our patrons. So we greatly appreciate everyone that's a Patreon member that supports us through that outlet. And you guys are just a huge blessing to us. You're allowing us to actually do this. So it's a great blessing. But everyone who's either written to us or supported us financially, we thank you guys. It's been such a show of the Father that we're actually making some sort of impact, that we're hopefully bringing hope to people and help them understand His Word better. So thank you so much for all that you guys do for us. All right, everyone, let's remember to subscribe. And I'm going to see here. Looks like XP is back. Welcome, Joe Decker, Southern Shavar. Welcome. Aram Sewell is here. Welcome. And Kelly J is here. Welcome. Yeah, for whatever reason, the link in the description, every time that I copy it and I upload it, YouTube doesn't activate it. It's broken. So I have to go back after the fact, after the broadcast, and go update it, basically. It's pretty annoying. I don't know why they do that. I don't know if that's intentional, if it's just something wrong. So, but if you guys will go to Kingdomcast and New Jerusalem Media, it's very good, very easy to go find. So if you guys can give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear and see me. Make sure everything's working well tonight. I appreciate it. But tonight we're going to be talking about, as you probably already saw. Let me go ahead and pull this up real quick. You guys already saw. We are going to be sharing some unique information from a modern movie that came out in 2012. Okay, so Karen C says you can hear and see well. Sounds good. Good video. All right, guys. Appreciate it. So this is a movie that came out in 2012. It was it was a unique, just a lot of people would call it just a campy horror movie. But at the same time, just like in a lot of movies that Hollywood produces, there's a ridiculous amount of symbolism that goes into this. And one of the producers of this and directors was also this guy named Josh Whedon. He worked on some Marvel movies like the Avengers in 2012. And so it's a unique film because it starts off, well, I'll tell you what, I've prepared something that I'll just kind of give us a brief summary of this. And there's going to be quite a few unique things that I tried to clip out of a short summary of this movie. I think it's about like a minute and a half little clip I'm going to show you guys, so y'all can have a good idea of what this movie's about, and then we'll kind of expound, and then we'll kind of look at scripture afterwards and some history as well. So it's pretty unique. So just 1 second, and I'm going to cue this up, and I'm trying a new thing here tonight. We're actually put it up on a private video so we can have better audio. All right, so there's no audio in this part intentionally, but this is just give you the brief idea of what this movie's about. This is just, they're going to go camping in the woods. Your typical teenagers going to camp in the woods, and what's about to start happening to them is obviously a horror movie where they encounter monsters and different things. But the
referenced throughout the film, but only seen briefly, the Ancient Ones were enormous lava-like humanoid gods that lived beneath the surface of the Earth, inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's pantheon of cosmic entities, known as the Great Old Ones. At the same time, I couldn't help but notice their similarity to the Titans of Greek mythology, especially Kronos, who bears a great resemblance to the god seen rising from the Earth at the end of the film. Understood that the ancients used to live above ground, ruling the primordial Earth during the Precambrian era some 4.6 billion years ago, and using their immense power to spill the blood of ancient creatures for their entertainment. It's explained that the sacrifice used to be as simple as throwing people into a volcano, but as time went on, the desire to see more entertaining means of sacrifice grew within the Ancient Ones, who then began changing the rules.
Okay, so in brief, for those of you who've never seen this before, I'm not going to make you watch it. This came back out in 2012, but the whole premise is that they're at these teenagers are lured to this cabin in the woods by this underground facility, which is ran in the United States, and there's multiple facilities like this in different places around the world, and they're designed to engineer and orchestrate the sacrifices that they bring in for these gods that live underground, and that's how the movie kind of unfolds into the shenanigans that start happening after that. But they start talking about how they've accomplished this repeatedly throughout the years, and that it used to be really simple, but then the gods started demanding more complicated ways for the victims to die so they could have more sport of it, basically. So
rules of the ritual to include 5 character archetypes, including the virgin, the athlete, the whore, the fool, and the scholar. These characters would have to be forced into situations where they would be ceremoniously slaughtered by creatures and monsters. And should humankind refuse to satiate the Ancient One's desire to see these events play out, all of humanity risked extermination via the wrath of the gods, who would once again rise onto the surface. Across the globe were the organization's way of increasing their chances of carrying out a successful ritual. The students involved in the Japanese ritual overcome their menacing spirit, sending the American facility into a frenzy.
Okay, so what you're about to see is in the movie, at these different places that they're carrying out these rituals every year, the American facility is getting word that the Japanese ritual is not going as it's supposed to, and they're breaking their perfect record because the Japanese kids have bound together to actually overcome the evil spirit, as you're about to see, and I'll explain more in just a minute. You're going to see a ton of symbolism here. So take note of all these horizontal and vertical elevators that are in the movie, because these are housing all the demons, all the chimera monsters that these people are trying to escape from. And that towards the end of the movie, these two main protagonists, which are the sacrifice. Yeah, and that's it. Essentially, it's a strange movie that is put into a very, like I said, a very campy scenario, because that's how they do it, right? They try to inject silliness into comedy, but all the while they're putting truth right in your face of stuff that's been around for a long, long time. So what we're going to look at is the history of some of the things that we saw in that clip, and how we can see those things not just in modernity through symbolism and through architecture and artwork, but also through why in history these things are connected and how it actually applies to scripture for our future. So first off, just take note of this unique design, because this is pretty interesting. We've got this cabin in the woods, but as you can see, it's floating off the ground, and it looks almost like a weird puzzle box. There's 3 layers to it, and that it's almost as if you would, if you matched it up, it still wouldn't look like a cabin, right? It would look, if you actually twisted the center to be flush with the other sides, top and bottom, it would actually be more of a cube, and that's going to matter later. So in quickness, though, that this was a really popular movie in 2012. This was something that people really liked. It did really well at the box office. It had some pretty big stars in it, and basically, it doesn't. They wanted to do a sequel because you guys know how Hollywood is just, they're super excited about doing sequels until they beat a horse to death kind of concept. But people were crying out, man, why don't do a sequel and make a franchise out of this, because it was so good. But it says here, this is what the actual directors and the writers were talking about the movie, that by the end of the film, the massive experiment being conducted in a secret laboratory that's meant to appease the gods with sacrifices has failed, and the gods are rising. Still, sequels are the norm in horror franchises, and the death of the leads usually doesn't matter. Think of how many times Jason or Freddy's been killed on the screen. They just keep coming back. But when asked about a Cabin in the Woods sequel, Goddard shot the notion down, explaining, "We had some crazy ideas, but Josh Whedon and I both felt strongly that we didn't want to do it just to do it, right? I'm very lucky that I get to keep making movies. I don't need to just go make a sequel for the sake of making a sequel. The only way we could do it is if we could do it justice. And the truth is, it's a hard one to do justice to. Every version of continuing the story undercuts the ending that we had in Cabin. And I just feel like that continues to be perfect ending for that movie, and I never want to undercut it." The end of the movie is the gods rise, right? And they start wreaking havoc on the earth. So that's so they're literally foregoing money to maintain the message. And that's another huge red flag for anything in Hollywood, right? But this here is the idea of this God that rises. And as the narrator said of this analysis film that was breaking down the movie, that it's the quote unquote God in this movie, Cabin in the Woods, that's rising from the ground looks a lot like the depictions of Kronos. And has kind of like a similar story, that this God is controlling all these chimera monsters, which are part of its creation, its quote unquote offspring from it. So we see a lot of similarities to fallen angels with the Nephilim, right? And how they've been around for a long time. They're still around. They've got these chimera demon things, unclean spirits that they have control over to go out and mess with mankind. But Kronos, this is where it gets interesting in the symbolism that you mix in with ancient Greek and Roman mythology. Kronos was usually depicted with a harp or a scythe or a sickle, which was the instrument he used to castrate and depose Uranus, his father. In Athens, the 12th day of the Attic month of Hecatombiane, a festival called Cronia was held in honor of Kronos to celebrate the harvest, suggesting that as a result of his association with the virtuous Golden Age, Kronos continued to preside as a patron of the harvest, and Kronos was also identified in classical antiquity with the Roman deity Saturn. Yeah, you guys know what Saturn is? A lot of you may already know about Saturn. Here's a picture of sculpture, some artwork of Saturn, and he's about to engage in human cannibalism. So a lot of you guys, hopefully, you're starting to pick up this idea. So we already know what Leviticus 18 through 20 tells us about the ways of the occult, the ways of the nations, the land of Canaan, and the pagan nations that Israel was supposed to be set apart from, that they were not to engage in that behavior. And some of that behavior we see replete throughout the stories of history, especially in Greek and Roman mythology, which is involving child sacrifice, cannibalism, drinking of human blood, the stuff that's listed out in Leviticus 17, 10 through 14. So this is this idea here in the movie was that had this massive creature rising from the sea, or rising from the earth. And it's in the movie, there's just this massive hand that comes up at the very end that looks like a hand of Kronos. And what's unique is we actually see architecture all over the world that people have decided to build massive hands coming out of the earth. All over the world, different countries. Oh, there's an actual giant coming out of the earth. This one's in Italy or in Sicily, I believe. And this is them actually constructing it and putting it up. The hand's coming up out of the earth or out of the. No, it's actually in Venice, so it's coming up out of the canals in Venice between the buildings to grab onto one of the buildings. And this one right here is actually in Washington, D.C., which anyone that's done any history or study on Washington, D.C. knows of all the pagan and occultic iconography everywhere in D.C. But this is the actual image from the movie that you see this massive hand of the quote-unquote God coming up out of the earth because he's mad because the sacrifices didn't go as they should have. And these boxes that are in the movie that house all the monsters and at one point house one of the protagonists and entrap them, they're all in this unique elevator system that moves up and down, left and right. And it's all a bunch of black cubes, which is huge on symbolism, guys, because that is one of the most dominant symbols of Saturn, right? Remember we talked about Cronus is related to Saturn in the Roman mythology? Well, that's the shape of the house on the cover of this movie, is a big cube. And all over the world, different countries and all the continents, we have people, publicly funded artwork that is a huge black cube. This is the one in Manhattan. Multiple occultic groups that associate themselves with Saturn and the all-seeing eye and the triangle. Here's another Rubik's Cube style cube that's here in Saturn. Honoring Saturn, and this is another cube here, a piece of artwork. This is actual artistic artwork, right, at a gallery, an art gallery. And then we have game cubes, so it's even in the culture for the children, right, to get them associated with the black cubes. And then, of course, in culture, entertainment, movies, this is Justice League, came out in 2017, I believe, and the story was that this God, quote unquote, God in the background you see with the horns for his helmet, he was searching after 3 black cubes that were called mother boxes. And the Mecca of all cubes, all pun intended, it's Mecca, right? The actual big black cube that an entire religion circles around and worships and bow down to. It's wild. But actually, we're going to connect some more of Islamic symbolism with the gods that have been previously mentioned. So now let's jump real quick to Osiris. And why you might be asking, wait a minute, what does Osiris have to do with this? I thought he's Egyptian. You've been talking about Greek and Roman gods. Well, you remember we saw up here earlier that the occult that worship Saturn, they use the same symbolism of the pyramid and the all-seeing eye. So we've got Osiris is the god of fertility, agriculture, the afterlife, the dead, resurrection, life, and vegetation in ancient Egypt religion, which, if you remember me reading the description about Kronos, he was also considered god over agriculture. So it was because they have a harvest to him. Does that make sense? So it's just the same families of gods being worshipped under different names, under different languages, because it's a different people group spread out after Genesis 11, all the language just changed. But right here, if we dig a little deeper into the origins of Osiris from Egyptian stories, it says both the insignias derived from the iconography of Enjedi, who was the local god of the Delta in a town named Djedu. By the word Djed in ancient Egypt means serpent wisdom. And he was represented in human form with 2 feathers on his head and holding the crook and flail in his hands, and at a very early date in Egyptian history, Enjedi, who had a close relationship with the kingship from the earliest of times, was absorbed into Osiris of Busiris, who became a national god simply known as Osiris. And Osiris, of course, was regarded not only as a god, but also as a deified deceased king, and consequently his insignia, and in particular that of the crook and flail, were treated as symbols of royalty. So here's the unique part about Osiris, above many other of the gods, is that he was originally a man, but upon his death, he's somehow deified, which is very unique. And also there's other Egyptian literature that talks about how Osiris himself was, his mortal flesh was turned into immortal flesh through this special thing called the Djed. And it's this column-like pillar, and archaeologists, are baffled to what it really did and what it really was. But supposedly it was something that helped him become immortal. And this is where we have all kinds of iconography about Osiris in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. And he is the god of the agriculture as well. That's the crook and the flail in his hands that you always see him with. And of course, the all-seeing eye is everywhere. If you can see behind him, all the kinds of iconography, the all-seeing eye and the Ankh, which is the representation of his eternal life. And then you've got the cube also being referenced in as the Star of Renfam. Okay, so you guys remember the Star of Renfam? What was it? Acts. You guys, help me out with in the chat. Is it Acts 7 at 7:38? Star of Renfam that's being mentioned. I'm trying to remember. It's Stephen talking about how they carried it with them from Egypt. Let me see here if I can find it. Maybe you guys can help me out in the chat. 7:40. Yeah, I was close. Sorry. It says, saying to Aaron, make for us gods who will go before us. For this Moses left Egypt, which did not what happened to him. No, that doesn't say it, but it's in here for sure. Oh, here it is. Just took up verse 43. You also took along the tabernacle of Molech and the star and the god of Rempha, the images which you made to worship, and I will also remove you beyond Babylon. So we have this unique connection here between Molech and Remphan, which depends on the translation, can be said a little bit differently. And this is what the the Israelites who came out of Egypt were spiritually adulterating against Yahweh with, was these symbols of false gods, right? And so, because they were already in Egypt where Osiris was glorified as the head god. And this is also depicted by the golden calf that we're aware of. But many of this stuff kind of blends together between the different cultures because, like I said, they're all worshiping the same gods, just with different representations. Depends on the culture they're in. But all of it was the same behavior that Yahweh was instructing the Israelites to not abide in, which was the behaviors that we see listed out in Leviticus 18 through 20, which were horrific stuff. And also in Leviticus 17 a little bit. So, but the all-seeing eye, also sometimes called the eye of Ra or the eye of Horus, it's attributed to both Ra, Osiris, and Horus as being some of the head king gods, Osiris being the only one that's supposedly deified under Ra and was literally said to be grafted into Ra. We even see it in pop culture that they use the all-seeing eye and the eye of Horus everywhere. There's a shoe. Did you guys know that there was shoes named Osiris? If you guys have teenagers that skateboard, you might have seen him asking for a pair of Osiris's. So look what on the shoe, on the symbol on the tongue of the shoe. You see that little symbol there? That is Star of Islam. It's the Star of Islam, which directly relates to the black cube that they worship in Mecca, which also relates to Ishtar, Isis. It's all the same stuff, guys. It's all the same stuff. So real quick, as we saw, the whole point of that movie was to simply talk about this massive destructive God that's going to be coming up out of the earth, and he controlled these chimeric like things that were already tormenting mankind. I'm not going to play those clips in the movie because they're pretty graphic, because it is a rated R horror movie, so there's a lot of scenes of carnage. But my explanation, I feel like, is fairly adequate. But if you just have to go watch it, that's up to you. I don't recommend anyone watching the movie. It's pretty gruesome. But the whole idea is that these people are running through this facility trying to get away from all these chimeric like monsters that are constantly coming after them because they got let out of all these holding cells, those cube like elevators. And then this big main Kronos type god comes up out of the ground, and the movie ends basically. So Revelation 9, you guys are very familiar, I'm sure. The fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven which had fallen to the earth, and the key of the bottomless pit was given to him. He opened the bottomless pit, and smoke went up out of the pit, like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit. And then out of the smoke came locusts upon the earth, and the power was given them as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were told not to hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but only the men who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not permitted to kill anyone, but to torment for 5 months. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings a man. And in those days, men will seek death and will not find it. Men will long to die, but will not. But death flees from them. The appearance of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle, and on their heads appeared to be crowns like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like the hair of a woman, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots, of many horses rushing to battle. They have tails like scorpions and stings, and in their tails is the power to hurt men for 5 months. They have as king over them the angel of the abyss, and his name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in the Greek he has the name Apollyon. The first woe is past. Behold, two woes are still coming after these things. So what I love about Revelation, if you guys have seen my New Heaven, New Earth video, you probably remember me saying this, but Revelation will explain itself. And it will explain itself, but sometimes even the explanation can be a little difficult if you don't know the Old Testament prophets. So, but thankfully, we have an actual explanation about who this beast is in Revelation 17. So 8 chapters later, it says here in verse 8 through 13, the beast that you saw that was and is not and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction, those who dwell on the earth and whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will wonder when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come. Here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. 5 has fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. And then 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. They have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. So this is the culmination of this beast character that comes up out of the pit that we're going to see Yeshua has to fight in Revelation 19, and he takes him out. You guys remember in the clip that I showed in the movie where we have the horrific ritual of these little 12-year-old, 9-year-old Japanese girls that are sitting around in a circle singing, like trying to overpower the evil spirit, and then it turns into a frog. Revelation 16, 13, 16. And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet 3 unclean spirits like frogs. For they are spirits of demons performing signs, which go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them together for the war of the great day of God the Almighty. And behold, I am coming like a thief, and blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his clothes. This is the only way that you want to be woke, guys. Stay awake. So that he will not walk about naked and men will not see his shame. And by the way, if you guys look in Exodus, let's go there real quick because I'm taking a slight deviation from what I prepared, but let's go there because this is, to me, it's an idiomatic phrase that I feel like a lot of people overlook from Exodus 32. When Moses is informed by the Father on Mount Sinai through the angel that he's speaking with that Aaron has led the people out of control, and let me see here. Moses saw the people in control. Okay, so in the actual, let me step out of this just real quick, and I'm going to pull this over for us. All right, let me make sure everybody can see that. Can y'all see that? In Exodus 32, 35. And when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked under their shame among their enemies. He's not talking about them literally being without clothes. He's talking about the same thing we just read in Revelation. It's the same type of idiomatic phrase, which is this idea that, behold, I'm coming like a thief. Let me make sure you guys can see what I'm looking at. There we go. All right, where he says here at the bottom, behold, I come like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his clothes so that he will not walk about naked and men will not see his shame. This is talking about someone that's doing the behavior of God, keeping the commandments. And if you're not doing the behavior of God and keeping the commandments, then you're not woke and you're naked, metaphorically. This is an idiomatic phrase. And this is the same thing that's used of the people that were not doing the behavior of God and worshiping a golden calf at the bottom of Mount Sinai. They had become naked, and Aaron had let that happen to their shame. And then it says, lastly, verse 16, they gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon. And Armageddon is fascinating. It's this massive valley that's in near the ancient boundaries of Naphtali. It's actually close to Nazareth, so it's like close to where Yeshua grew up, and it's in the mid-northern Israel area, about 200 miles from Jerusalem. And it's a huge valley that could easily hold an amazing amount of people if there's a massive battle there. And it's just farmland right now. And in fact, Mount Carmel is close by, which I think is fascinating because 1 Kings 18, that story with Elijah and the prophets of Baal and Mount Carmel was one of my favorite stories. But if you remember in that story that he brings those prophets of Baal down the mountain. After the showdown on top of the mountain, he brings them down into the valley below and slaughters them. So he's actually bringing them down Mount Carmel into the valley of Armageddon, which is super symbolic of stuff in the day of the Lord. But basically, Revelation 13 or Revelation 16 talks about the demons that became that were in the frogs, that were likened to like a frog, and they go out to gather the nations to fight on the day of the Lord, to actually try to fight Yeshua at his return. So it's just interesting that Hollywood itself is going to give you just blatant, direct symbolism, because the people that are behind the scenes that, you know, control the world, they're literally telling you, even though they try to put it in campy movies, but they're really telling you exactly what they do. And there's several statements within that movie that, because there's so much cursing, I couldn't actually splice it very well, and so I just decided to explain it to you guys. But there's so many statements in that movie where they directly tell you, like, well, this is how it's done. This is what we do. I'm going to tell you the truth of how this happens. This is how the world is ran. This is what keeps us doing, you know, the way that we do the world today is how it, and even in the clip that I showed you, it says at the beginning of the movie that there's other facilities around the world, like Buenos Aires and Madrid, Spain, and some other places around the world, that they were actually their monsters were getting out of hand, and their experiments were failing, and the people were rising up, and the sacrifices weren't going as planned. And so this is why when you see the clip of the Japanese kids that are overcoming the demon, it turns into a frog, and they're all celebrating, the American base is stressed out because they think they're the last ones that have to complete the sacrifice in order to stave off these gods from rising and quote unquote save the world. So it's all twisted, super, super twisted. But it's one of those deals where, you know, how many stories have we heard through the quote unquote grapevine from social media and from other people's testimonies about how at the high levels of power, even in government and the military, that they truly believe that the ancient gods of ancient Samaria and Babylon are going to return one day. And they've talked about this stuff. And we've had people that have testified that that's some of the things that they're preparing for. And a lot of people think it has to do with the alien deception as well, because that's, if you look in all the iconography of the ancient quote unquote gods from some of the ancient cultures that I showed tonight, it seems like they also had the power of flight. We actually know from ancient India, the Vimanas, which is, you know, they have like basically craft schematics from 4,000 years ago from flying crafts, where they said the gods used to use those from ancient India. And so, and by the way, what I always thought was really interesting is I read a long time ago that in Indian culture from ancient India, that their whole practice of reincarnation that they believe, and part of Hinduism, that it started with the gods, that originally it was just for the gods. And then later over time in different governments, they then started telling to the people as it's kind of like a hanging a carrot in front of them. And if you're a good person and you're a good, you are loyal to the government and you're a good person, then you'll get reincarnated too. But originally it was just for the gods, which makes perfect sense if you understand the unclean spirits according to scripture. And that's how they can constantly come and reincarnate themselves or refashion themselves. Each new culture, they take on a different persona, but it's still the same behavior that is their underpinning, which is it's anti-Torah behavior, right? It's this human sacrifice to Molech and to other gods, and it's creating mass destruction. It's war for profit. It's pharmakia. It's all these things that we see being forced upon societies in every country, and it's the fight. It's the fight that we're in. In fact, guys, there's a passage in I want to say it's in Enoch. It's in First Enoch 89, but let me see if I can find it real quick. It's a unique passage because it talks about one second. You can see I don't have them all memorized, but I've got. I think I know where this one is. And it's in the latter portion of the book of Enoch. And man, I just wish I could find it. I may spend too much time trying to find it for you, but ultimately it's a book. It's in the end of the book of First Enoch, and it's talking about how the righteous are happy when justice is done, the day the Lord happens, and Yahweh comes through his son and takes out the wicked and things are pieces brought to the earth because the righteous have constantly been fleeing the persecution of the unrighteous throughout history. It's like it's the narrative that's always happening. It's the wicked, the unrighteous, those who are irreverent kings and rulers of the earth. They just can't leave people alone, right? Because that is part of their religion, is to constantly inject themselves into your life and get you away from Yahweh in any possible way they can. They try to get you tricked into their behavior or doing their behavior willfully, whichever route that they can accomplish. So it's just it's unique phraseology. I have to find it and I'll have to post it on socials later, but it's very unique because say the righteous, will be happy to finally escape the persecution of the unrighteous when Messiah returns. So guys, I want to check the chat real quick and see if there's any questions. Thank you, David Shear, for putting the Kingdomcast link in the chat. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that, guys. And again, I just want to say thank you to all our Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you to the mods as well. So if you guys have any questions about some of the, I think I saw some questions earlier. Let me scoot up here and see if I find any. I don't know, the chat's been flying, so I'm trying to scroll back through it. But ultimately, if you haven't seen my Apollyon video, I know there's some of you guys that are new to the channel. It's on my most popular playlists on my channel here on YouTube, and it should pop up first, I believe. So I actually go over in great depth about who Apollyon is in Revelation chapter 9. I go through all the Old Testament and everything. And so, we have XP is repeating that verse. Okay, I didn't see any good question. But if you guys didn't have any questions, hopefully that communicated some things correctly tonight. In fact, tonight I was going to have a guest on tonight, but her house flooded. And so everything's in transition. So we rescheduled for next week. But I wasn't going to be able, I was hoping that we were going to talk about some unique biblical creation ideas tonight. But her house flooded. So let me see here. I think I see a question. Great Deception is asking, what are my thoughts on the Nazirite vow? And what, I guess my question would be, can you clarify the question and in what capacity? Like what do I think it's still a thing or still, I'm not sure exactly how you're asking. It was definitely, it's number 6. It was something that that person could do. And it's what we see Paul doing in Acts chapter 20. He actually gets arrested trying to do it because he's and it's the second one he's actually done, because in Acts chapter 18, he had already shaven his head to do that earlier, but that was several months earlier. So he's actually doing a second Nazirite vow in Acts 20 when he goes to the temple and gets arrested because the other disciples asked him to do that. And so it's sounds like a great thing. But the only problem is we can only do it. We can't do it to the actual letter of the law right now. If you wanted to do something like that, you can only do it in symbolic fashion because you can't complete it, which is you'd have to go to an actual ordained temple with ordained Levite priests and commit the sacrifice or submit to them the sacrifice that's instructed from Numbers chapter 6. So, there's nothing wrong with wanting to dedicate with extra dedication, your intent, your heart to the Father, to try to get sin out of your life and everything. There's nothing wrong with that. But the specifics of the Nazirite vow can't truly be completed without a standing temple that's ordained by God and in the Levite priesthood. And that's not going to happen until Yeshua returns. So, all right. Let me see here. Thank you, David Shearer, for dropping the link to Apollyon in the chat. And Bobby Moe, are you asking this question to me? I think you are, but I'm not sure. So let me know if you're asking that to me. And in the moment, I'm going to go on to another question real quick. Same question line within us. Are you asking that to me? Guys, if you're asking a question, just make sure you put it in all caps. That way I know you're talking to me and not someone else in the chat. Looks like XP is asking, do you think it's possible to perform well enough in this life and be able to arm wrestle Michael and win? I don't know, man. I don't know how the spiritual body works. Like, not in this life. I don't know about this life. Yeah, it seems silly. I honestly don't know if I would want to get anywhere close to an angelic being when he's trying to exert his power, because I mean, Michael is able to wrap up Satan in the massive chain and lock him away. He's probably one of the most powerful ones that's listed in the scripture, next to Joel, but and Raphael. But all right, so it looks like we have another question real quick. It's the Great Deception. Would Yeshua complete what I can't on earth? I really apologize, brother. That is a super vague question. I want to answer and help out. If you have a genuine, please try to give me some specifics. I'm not sure in what vein you mean. I apologize. I'm not trying to act coy or anything. I really don't understand in what capacity you mean. But rephrase the question, and I'll try to address it here in a minute. So Andy Penny is saying he believes that some of these so-called gods were like enough for the giants used to walk the earth. And what are your thoughts? Yeah, that's the idea, is that these little g gods are the unclean spirits that they're the disembodied spirits of giants from before the flood. So that's exactly what Enoch 15 and Jubilees chapter 10 tell us. So it's kind of yeah. All right, so let's see here. We've got question. Andy Penny, I believe some of these. Okay, I'm sorry. That's the same thing I just answered. I think Great Deception. I think you're completing your sentence. I'm not sure, brother. Please try to put it all in one sentence, guys, if you're asking a question, so I know, for one, that you are talking to me and asking me a question, and that I can understand the question. The run-on phrases and the partial sentences. I could talk for 5 minutes on something you're not even asking. So please help me out with the full sentence. It's understandable. But if the Great Deception, if you're talking about Yeshua completing what you can't in regards to a Nazirite vow, no, because it's your vow. Yeshua's already done with his. Like he's good, man. He's in the temple mediating for you in a different capacity. So it doesn't work like that. What you're parroting, or at least the idea that you're parroting, is what we hear in a lot of mainstream churches. But that's not how the actual law of number 6 works. So I would reconsider that personally. Richard Merritt is asking, is Michael the same as Yeshua? No, that's what is that? Jehovah's Witness doctrine? We don't believe that stuff here at Kingdom of Context. So no, he's not. Michael is an angel. He's an archangel of God, listed out in several verses, Enoch 20, Revelation 20. Yeshua is the Son of God. So he's greater than all the angels. So let me see here. Who are the 4 angels in Revelation 9:14? Thanks. Believe in a seeing. I don't know their names. So I apologize, man. I do believe they're angels, because just as Jubilees chapter 2:2 tells us that there are angels who are in charge of winds, and there's all kinds of angels that are in charge of all different facets of creation. And there's angels that are responsible for being in the army and fighting, and like there's all kinds of archons of angels. But oh, you're not asking about 7:1. You're asking about 9:14. I apologize. Let's go look. But I don't think it gives any names of angels in chapter 9 other than, let me see here. Yeah, okay. So it is the same thing I was thinking of, the 4 angels bound at the Great River Euphrates. It doesn't tell us their names, but it does tell us that there are angels that are stationed to take care of stuff like that in Jubilees chapter 2, verse 2. So you're welcome to check that out when you have a chance. Quick question from Karen C. Do you think the art of the hands are just symbolic, or will come to life like golems? Now they're just symbolic, because just like we hear repeated in an abundance in the Old Testament, that it's just wood, stone, and silver, and brick and clay. They're not animate, right? There's just idolatry. And so it's not, they're not real. But what we read in Revelation 9, that is alive, and that is going to come up out of the earth, and that is going to run around and mess with people. And it's going to go out to destroy and conquer nations. And actually the beast, as we read in Revelation 13, is the same one that overcomes the saints and persecutes people to death. And it's a time of great tribulation. So those are very real for sure. Question, Russell LaFleur is asking, are you familiar with the Memra? I'm not. If you want to expound a little bit with how you're using that word and what you're referring to, you're welcome to, and maybe I can talk about it, but otherwise I apologize, I'm not. Jeremiah 15:16 is asking, who is the prince in Ezekiel? Do you have a verse that you're referring to? If you do, if you're, I don't know if you're, which chapter and verse you're referring to. So I don't want to start answering a question and waste everyone's time if I don't know what you're asking about. Let's see here. Brittany Sanchez, it says, does the story of Osiris come from Nimrod? The story of Osiris is, from what I can understand from piecing together, what the scriptures say and what ancient Israelite literature, Hebrew literature says, as well as literature from that I've read from ancient Egypt, is, other stories from historians. Osiris is just one of the names that was given to, as we read tonight, as the patron god of an entire region. So they would take someone that came as a ruler, they would glorify him in the sense of their conversation and how they worshipped him as a patron god, meaning there was other little gods underneath him, but he was like the head god of that nation. And so in Egypt is very unique because they had a whole family of gods that are all spoken with reverence, but there was some major gods. And one of them being this Ra character, whom supposedly was even over Osiris, but then Osiris upon his death was kind of grafted into Ra's authority. It's like a counterfeit of the father and son. It's Satan and Nimrod. And then Ra took Osiris and made him god of the underworld in place of Anubis. So there's this unique, and I personally, and this is going to sound crazy, guys, I personally think that the false prophet that comes back in Revelation could very well be Anubis, because he was famous for resurrecting people. And he was also a Nephilim chimeric false god. So it's this very, very possible we'll see the reemergence of the ancient gods, that the Sumerians, the Assyrians, the Hittites, the Akkadians, the Canaanites, the Egyptians, that the Greeks, like that whole group of people, that they all talked about stuff, that they come back, which is exactly why we read in that passage in Revelation 17, that the world will see the beast who was and is not now, but will come again. They worship him and they're in awe of him, right? Because they knew that he was, but there was a time when he's not on the earth, but then he comes back. You see what I mean? So they have the knowledge of who this was in the past and who he's coming back, and that's why they were revere him and worship him. And Yeshua comes back to destroy him. But that's the idea. But it's a good question. Let me see here. Let me see. Callie J is asking, are the ones let loose from Revelation 9 during the time of tribulation, during the 42 months? That's my understanding. That's the way I understand it, is that the Revelation 9 beast and all those chimeric things that come up with him, that's happening in the 42 months of tribulation, and that's how they can fit the 5 months in there easily. And then they're also persecuting the saints during that time, which is what Revelation 13 talks about. He has 42 months to blaspheme the God of heaven and the temple and everyone up in heaven, as well as persecuting the saints. And that's also the same time period the two witnesses of Revelation 11 are on the earth to counteract some of the things that he's doing, because they can't be killed till the very end, right before Yeshua returns. So that's my interpretation and understanding of that. Okay, so Jeremiah 15:16 is asking, who's the prince in Ezekiel 45:22? And a lot of people think that it is Yeshua. For a time, we have thought that it is Yeshua, and the more I've studied it over the last 3 years, I personally think that it's just speaking in reference to the princes of the regions, because the whole thing is explaining land area portions and regions within the appointed areas of the New Jerusalem. Okay, and this is what chapters 40 through 48 is going into great depth to expound upon the interior design of different places within the New Jerusalem. And then even, I believe it's chapter 47, and actually gives out the different land assignments and areas, and who's adjacent to who from the 12 tribes. And then, of course, outside that would be Gentiles, or people from the nations, if you will. So it's kind of a bigger, in-depth conversation. So the prince that provides for himself and the people, let me go ahead and put this in the chat real quick, and so people can see the verse that she's asking about. This is, from my understanding, this is a prince that will provide for himself and all the people of the land a bull for a sin offering. That's not Yeshua, but that's going to be whoever's the governor over that region. And of among the that's worshiping at this temple that has human Levites that are appointed in here. This is because, remember again, that just like there was an interior area to the temple and there was an outer area that the Levite priest would minister in, but the interior area that was only Aaron, his sons, could minister in the Holy of Holies. So there's a same parallel, if you will, to the New Jerusalem's interior area that's being expounded upon with like eight different chapters and at the end of Ezekiel. And this whole idea is that the outer extended areas are going to be able to have, those are places where the Gentiles, if they're doing Torah, Revelation 22:14, they can come in and they can exist. Again, this is a much bigger conversation, but within those peoples, you're going to have leaders, and those leaders in scriptural terms are called princes because they're responsible for that group of people. And so that's why they're coming forward with sin offerings, because there's an altar in Ezekiel 43 within that boundary, within that thing. That's why in Isaiah 66, Yeshua chooses new Levites when he comes back. I think this is verses 17 through 22. And because the humans will be, when the New Jerusalem set down and people can come to the gates of the New Jerusalem and to the interior area where they will offer their sacrifices and speak with the priest, they're going to be speaking with Levites that are appointed from Aaron. And we have this Melchizedekian glorified priesthood of resurrected saints under Yeshua's authority that are also in there as well, that will be superseding the human Levites and making sure they're doing their jobs right. You see what I mean? So you got that double layer of redundancy of authority and of safety checks so that the Torah is enacted properly and there's peace on the earth. And it's very similar to the idea that Moses kind of checked Aaron, but yet Aaron was the ruler of the people and actually interacted with the people as their priest. But yet Moses could still we see still Moses doing his own sacrifices and acting like a priest himself. So he's like a symbol of the Melchizedekian concept. Aaron's a Levitical concept. We're going to see that same dichotomy in the New Jerusalem during the millennial reign. Again, that's a whole video, guys. That's a whole nother thing. So, all right, guys, I'm going to take one more question. We could do this for hours, but I have to cut it off at about an hour tonight and take one more question and we'll bounce. I really appreciate everybody showing up and being here tonight. Let me see here. Kingdom of Truth is asking about Enoch and Leviathan and in Job, and they're saying that there's two different pronouns that are being used for those. So let me go look that up again and make sure, because I know there's multiple Leviathans mentioned in Psalms, and so it's, depends on if it's the big Leviathan or if we'll have to look at the context. I don't have that available to me just right now, but I think it's also in Psalm 74 and Psalm 103, and there's a few places that there's multiple Leviathans mentioned. So if they are large sea serpent-like creatures, and it would make sense that they're being spoken about. But also we have to remember that the book of First Enoch has it can actually have translation mistakes. Like you see stuff that's inserted, especially in that. I know which chapter you're referring to. It's chapter 60. And if you look in the actual R.H. Charles, where he tries to show both the Ethiopian and the Greek, you're going to see, I think it goes down to like verse 7, and then it skips down to verse 25, because there again, the book of First Enoch is built off of fragments. So even when they're translating, they're doing the best of their understanding and translating the fragments they have. And so there's a lot of emendations that are translator marks and notations. And so you just have to, I guess what I'm trying to say is it takes looking into how the translators actually started translating stuff and the notes that they made in the text when they have to fill in a word that was partially there, or that they're either guessing to make sense of the sentence. So that particular chapter, that's what we look at as Enoch 60. There's it's fragmented everywhere. So we'll just have to take a deeper look at that. But that's a great question, brother. All right, so let me see here. Oh, and also Ken and I are planning to do a show on the book of Job, on Hanging on His Words. And if you guys haven't gone to Hanging on His Words and subscribe, please do that. And we actually are planning to do a couple episodes, I believe, through his new series called True Sleuths. And we're going to be doing that on the book of Job here in the future. And so we're going to be addressing all the differences in the Masoretic and the Septuagint within the book of Job, and there's a lot of them. So again, I'm going to need to go check out some of the verses you're referencing. Noah Pereira is asking, is there a correlation between Solomon and the beast? I apologize. I don't know. I've never heard of that idea, that suspicion. Solomon's dead. He's waiting judgment, and the beast is someone that comes back. So he's Apollyon that was spoken of in ancient times. I personally attributed him to Nimrod of the Bible, and that's why the king of Babylon comes back to rule Babylon before it's finally destroyed by Yeshua. So that's my understanding, interpretation. Go watch that video that's been put in the chat. It's also on my playlist under Apollyon on my channel, and I go over all the scriptures for that in depth to explain to you who the beast is. So the Bible tells us with very clear language who the beast is. All right, guys, I appreciate everybody. I'm going to give you guys a chance to listen to our awesome brother Ken Heiderbrecht hanging on his words, and we will see you guys. Hopefully, join us tomorrow night. We're doing our Milk and Meat on the Book of the Law versus the Book of the Covenant, and my wife will be joining me for that. So join us tomorrow night at 6:30 Mountain Standard Time for our Milk and Meat live stream. And then, hey guys, next week on June 5th, I believe, whatever is Friday of next week. Yeah, I think it's going to be June 5th. Zen Garcia is going to be joining me on our Milk and Meat live stream, and we're going to be chatting about the serpent seed theory. And so he and I have spoken about it a little bit, and he knows that I'm on I do not agree with that theory, and he's a proponent of that theory. So we're going to be going over the scriptures and looking at it together. And so he'll be joining me next Friday. So you guys be sure to don't miss that as well. I appreciate everybody for being here, and we hope to see you tomorrow night.
If I saw the world through the eyes of the Father above,